God says, do not fear the storm you see forming, fear the emptiness of standing still when I've called you forward. The sky feels heavier tonight, the kind of quiet that hums before lightning. You sense it, something is shifting. It isn't punishment, it's preparation. Archangel Michael moves through the unseen like fire behind glass, gathering strength for what is coming. He has been sent to remind you that courage is not absence of fear but obedience in motion. You've prayed for change, and heaven heard you, but change rarely arrives dressed as comfort. The tragedy approaching is not destruction, it's disruption, the tearing of what no longer fits. What's ending is what would have broken you later. Michael stands at the edge of your path, sword lowered, voice steady. This is an emergency of purpose. If you keep clinging to the familiar, it will become your famine. Let go before life has to pry your fingers open. Thunder rolls in the distance. The air tastes metallic, electric with decision. You feel the tremor inside your chest, the holy urgency to move, to forgive, to speak, to begin. That's the real crisis, the call to act while time still listens. God says, open now, your eyes, your heart, your willingness. What feels like danger is doorway. If you delay, regret will weep where faith could have rejoiced. The wind rises, candles flicker. Michael's shadow crosses the room, wings wide enough to hold tomorrow. Step through, he commands. And as you do, fear breaks like glass behind you. The tragedy never lands, it transforms into testimony. The breaking point of change. God says, the moment that feels like collapse is usually construction. I shake what you outgrew so what I promised can stand. The storm that was only a hum in the distance has arrived. Rain lashes the city in silver threads, wind wails against the windows, and every loose thing in your life seems to rattle at once. The phone rings with unwelcome news, a plan unravels, an old fear resurfaces. You whisper, not again, but deep down you know this isn't repetition, it's revelation. Archangel Michael moves through the storm center, not to stop it but to steer it. His wings cut through the rain like shields of light. Do not mistake pressure for punishment, he says. This is the weight that presses diamonds out of dust. Inside, you feel the tearing, people drifting away, expectations dissolving, certainty splitting into questions. Yet beneath the noise runs a strange steadiness, as if something within you has already decided to survive. That decision is heaven's foothold. Lightning flares, and for an instant the room glows bright enough to reveal what the darkness hid, unspoken dreams, talents you buried, courage you had postponed. The tragedy you feared is actually releasing everything trapped behind caution. God says, let it break. I cannot pour new wine into unbroken jars. The storm tilts into its fiercest hour. You close your eyes and pray, not for escape but for endurance. The prayer feels borrowed, ancient, the kind uttered by those who trusted before proof. And then it happens, the sound of something giving way, not in destruction but in delivery. The roof holds, the walls hold, but inside, an old grief finally cracks open. Tears come that taste like release. Michael kneels beside you, his armor reflecting the lightning outside. This, he says, is the real emergency, the heart learning to breathe again after years of guarding itself. Let it. You do, and the thunder begins to fade. Hours later, the storm passes as quietly as it began. Streets glisten, branches drip, the world smells clean. You step outside barefoot, unafraid of the puddles. Every sound is sharper, every color honest. Loss has become clarity. God says, now look around you. Nothing important drowned. You lift your eyes, and through the clearing clouds a single shaft of light falls straight across your path. Michael stands within it, wings folded, calm as sunrise. This is not the end, he says. It's the turning. What the storm scattered, heaven will reorder. And the next time the sky darkens, you will not tremble, you will remember. He turns toward the horizon where the rain still falls in thin, shining lines. Rest now, he adds, for the rebuilding begins at dawn. And when you finally sleep, you do so without fear of thunder, knowing the same force that once terrified you now works for you. God says, every storm I allow leaves footprints of purpose. If you follow them, they lead to clearer ground. The world smells of renewal. Rain has rinsed the dust from rooftops, gutters sing low hymns of running water. You wake before sunrise, body tired but spirit sharpened, the way a blade gleams after being tested. Silence has weight now, not emptiness but substance. You step outside. The sky is the color of forgiveness, pale gold fading into gray-blue. Birds return cautiously, one song at a time, like messengers checking to see if peace truly stayed. Their music pulls you forward until you're standing where yesterday's stormwater still shines on the pavement. The reflection startles you, not because of how you look, but because of what you see behind you, light. It isn't morning light yet, it's residual glow, heaven's way of signing the aftermath. Archangel Michael waits at the street's edge, armor dulled to bronze by mist. He carries no weapon, he doesn't need one. It held, he says simply, glancing at the world reborn. Everything that was meant to remain, remained. You want to ask about what was lost, but he raises a hand. Look again. The puddle beside your feet ripples, and within it flashes image after image, the people who left, the doors that closed, the plans that died. All turning transparent, then fading into scenes of new beginnings. Nothing perished, Michael continues. It transformed. Even endings have afterlives. He turns his gaze eastward where dawn is pushing against the clouds. This light you see, he says, is not sunlight yet. It's the world adjusting to heaven's recalibration. Wait until the full day, you'll understand more. You walk with him through streets that feel foreign and familiar at once. Neighbors sweep debris, smiling more easily than before. Children chase paper boats through rain channels that gleam like tiny rivers of promise. The city smells alive. You realize that survival itself has fragrance, a mix of relief and gratitude. God says, do not rebuild with fear as mortar. Let wonder be your architect. By mid-morning, the sun burns through completely. Its warmth doesn't just touch skin, it soaks into bone. You feel rested in places you didn't know could rest. Michael pauses beside a toppled tree, roots exposed, and kneels. Watch, he instructs. Beneath the wet soil, new shoots already push upward. Growth begins before grief finishes speaking, he explains. Life never asks permission to return. You kneel too, fingers sinking into cool earth. The soil pulses faintly, alive. In that pulse you sense more than biology, you sense rhythm, the same pulse that carried you through the storm, the same heartbeat that taught thunder how to end. For the first time you understand that every element, from wind to water to silence, follows choreography set by love. Michael stands, wings catching sunlight. Dawn is not compensation, he says, it's continuation. What broke did so only to reveal where strength truly lived. You walk on together until the city gives way to open fields slick with dew. Ahead lies horizon, wide, forgiving, unwritten. The angel gestures toward it. You feared tragedy, he says, but tragedy feared transformation. It lost its grip the moment you refused despair. A breeze slides across the grass like a benediction. You close your eyes and breathe it in, it tastes of metal and honey, remnants of storm and promise intertwined. The day feels infinite. The road ahead gleams. God says, peace is not the absence of noise, it is the confidence that you can walk through it and still hear me. Midday spills over the landscape like a soft tide. The streets that once echoed with panic now hum with purpose. You can hear hammering somewhere in the distance, people repairing roofs, rebuilding fences, but even those sounds feel different, almost rhythmic, like percussion in a hymn. The world is working again, yet the pace is merciful. No one shouts. No one rushes. It is as if the storm taught every heart to measure twice before speaking once. Archangel Michael walks a little ahead of you. The gleam on his armor catches the sunlight and throws small flares of gold across the puddled ground. Each flash seems to land exactly where someone stands in need. A man hesitating with his broken ladder suddenly finds balance. A mother juggling groceries feels her child's hand tighten safely in hers. The light does not linger, it moves. Heaven prefers motion to monument. You notice how everything around you feels connected now. The smell of rain-soaked soil blends with the faint sweetness of blooming jasmine. Somewhere a church bell rings, its sound travels outward until it meets the rumble of distant thunder retreating over the hills. Creation is answering itself, call to response, wound to healing. Michael stops at a narrow alley you've never entered before. Another door, he says quietly. A smaller one. You hesitate. The alley looks unremarkable, stone walls, scattered leaves, but something in the air buzzes with potential. Every life, he explains, contains backstreets where unacknowledged miracles wait for permission to appear. You step inside. The light dims to a cool gray, then brightens again from within the walls themselves. Faded posters peel back to reveal murals, faces of ordinary people painted in color that seems too alive to be pigment. These are the ones who survived with you, Michael says. You never met them, but their courage kept the balance. When one heart refuses despair, 1,000 are strengthened by permission. A single tear slips down your face, hot against the chill air. For the first time you understand that survival is never solitary, it is communal even when invisible. God says, I knit endurance across distance. Each act of faith is thread in another's safety net. At the end of the alley stands a door, plain wood, no lock, just a handle worn by waiting. Michael nods. This one opens forward. You reach for it. The hinge creaks softly, and behind it lies not another street but a field of tall wheat bending in the wind. The sight stuns you. The field wasn't there yesterday. It grew overnight, Michael says. Every thank you you whispered in pain became a seed. You walk into the field, stalks brushing your hands, the air fragrant with promise. Each step releases tiny sparks of light that lift into the breeze. Those are answers to prayers you forgot you prayed, the angel explains. They never died, they matured. You laugh through the tears. So this is what grace looks like grown. Michael smiles. Yes. And it multiplies better when shared. He bends, picks a single ear of grain, and places it in your palm. Keep this, he says, as reminder and responsibility. You now carry the rhythm of renewal. Feed others with it. The wheat glows once, then settles to the color of sunlight stored. You close your hand around it, warmth flows through your veins, a quiet strength that steadies your breathing. God says, the blessing you hold becomes alive only when broken and given. You know what you must do, so, share, speak. Not grand speeches, but steady kindnesses. The day bends toward evening as you and the angel walk back through the city, scattering unseen seeds with each step. Hope doesn't need announcement, it leaves evidence. Michael pauses at a crossroads where four paths diverge. Tomorrow you'll see what today planted, he says. Do not look for fireworks, look for order. That is how heaven celebrates. He turns toward the fading sun. The light around him thickens to amber, and within that glow you can almost hear distant voices singing, not loud, but endless. The storm was a teacher, he adds. Now the lesson travels. You look up at the sky streaked in orange and violet and realize the day has come full circle. The same clouds that terrified you now paint beauty across the horizon. Even scars can color the sunset when grace holds the brush. Michael's eyes soften. One more section of the road remains, he says. The peace you carry must meet purpose. Are you ready? You nod. Then keep walking. God says, when peace takes root, purpose begins to bloom. Do not mistake quiet for the end, it is the breath before creation speaks again. Twilight stretches its golden net across the world. The light that once fought through clouds now rests gently on everything it touches, pavement, leaves, the curve of your own hands. What yesterday broke apart has become pattern, what frightened you now glows with recognition. The city no longer feels like a battlefield. It feels like belonging. You walk the same streets where thunder once shouted your name, yet they sound different under your feet, softer, certain. Children chase the last warmth of daylight, vendors laugh while closing their stalls. Life has resumed its humble miracles. You realize the storm didn't steal your peace, it revealed how much of it you already had. Archangel Michael appears beside you, not descending, just arriving, as though he had always been part of this hour. The armor that blazed in lightning now mirrors the mellow hues of dusk. It's time to look backward one last time, he says. Not to mourn, but to measure. He gestures, and the sky ahead folds into a mirror made of light. In it you see the timeline of your life, the panic, the patience, the breakthroughs, but each moment now framed by understanding. You watch pain and growth trade places until you can't tell which birthed which. The mirror dissolves into air, leaving only serenity. That, Michael says, is wisdom, memory without poison. You breathe deeply. The air tastes of rain's afterscent and bread baking somewhere unseen. It feels like forgiveness made physical. God says, I never promised you storms would stop, I promised you would stand after them. The angel leads you toward the hill where you first sought shelter. Grass, flattened by rain, has sprung upright again, each blade catching the last threads of sunlight. Even the earth remembers resilience, he remarks. Learn from it. He lifts his hand and the horizon opens, revealing new paths branching like rivers, some narrow and winding, some broad and bright. These are your next choices, he continues. None are wrong if you walk them with peace. You hesitate. How will I know which one? Michael smiles. Listen for alignment, not applause. The right path hums in the same key as your healing. The words settle into you like coordinates. The wind hushes. Crickets begin their evening chorus, the sound of persistence disguised as music. Everything seems to agree with the angel's counsel. You kneel in the grass and whisper a thank you that feels too small for the magnitude of what you've survived. Yet heaven answers anyway, a cool breeze brushes your face, carrying faint echoes of your own laughter from some future day. Confirmation. Michael steps closer. The next season will not require battle, he says. It will require balance. Guard your peace as you once guarded your hope. Use your voice not to defend your pain, but to describe your progress. Teach by being whole. You rise. The horizon gleams. For a moment, the angel's wings unfold completely, light spilling in every direction like liquid dawn. One more thing, he adds, turning slightly so the sun crowns his shoulder. Never forget that you were never alone in the dark. Even silence was supervision. God says, I was the calm between your heartbeats. The words drift into you and stay there, anchoring deeper than fear ever reached. You know now that tragedy never had authority, it only had volume. Peace, though quieter, was stronger all along. Michael takes a single step backward, fading into brilliance until he's a silhouette made of gold. Walk on, he says. The dawn doesn't need guarding anymore. It has you. Then he is gone, leaving behind only the faint shimmer of wings across the sky, two lines of light intersecting like a blessing. You watch until they fade into blue. Night gathers, gentle and wide. You turn toward home, carrying not the memory of the storm but the rhythm of survival. Windows flicker on one by one around you, each glow a small agreement between earth and heaven. You realize the world doesn't have to be perfect to be holy, it only has to keep beginning. At your door you pause, touching the handle with the same reverence you once reserved for prayer. Inside waits warmth, quiet, and an unfinished tomorrow. You step through and let the door fall closed behind you, certain of one thing. The dawn may end, but the becoming does not. God says, sleep in peace, my child. The light that followed you home will never leave. The call of renewal. God says, when I restore a heart, I do not close it again, I send it out to restore others. Morning arrives unannounced. No fanfare, no thunder, just a still light spilling across the table where last night's candle melted into a small sun of wax. The world outside hums with the steady rhythm of normal life, footsteps, kettle whistles, the distant laughter of children on their way to school. But to you, everything feels newly tuned, as though the storm rewired sound itself. Every noise carries harmony now. You sit for a moment with your hands wrapped around a mug of tea. Steam curls upward, tracing invisible scripture into the air. Peace feels heavier today, not in weight but in presence. It fills the room like a guest who intends to stay. You realize that for the first time in years, you are not waiting for the next disaster, you are listening for the next instruction. The instruction comes quietly. God says, "Take what I have given and let it move." Archangel Michael reappears, this time not in armor but in ordinary radiance, light clothed in simplicity. Peace was never meant to be storage, he says. It is currency. Spend it where the world is still in debt. He leads you to the window. Outside, the city glows like an answered prayer that hasn't been fully spoken. People rush past each other, some smiling, some carrying invisible storms. Look at them, Michael whispers. Every one of them believes they are alone in the rain. They need proof that survival is possible. You nod slowly. How do I give proof? By being evidence, he replies. Live in such a way that your calm becomes contagious. You step into the street. The morning air tastes of possibility. The baker you greet every day looks tired, you ask how she's doing, and for a split second, surprise flickers across her face before relief settles in. She tells you about her sleepless nights, the bills, the worry. You listen, not with advice but with attention. By the time she finishes, her voice has steadied. Something invisible but undeniable has transferred, courage. God says, every time you listen without judgment, you repair what silence broke. You continue walking, and small assignments unfold like petals. A stranger's dropped wallet finds its owner, an elderly neighbor smiles at the flowers you water for her, a child laughs because you waved first. None of these moments are spectacular, yet each hums with the same holiness that once split the sky. Heaven's work has simply changed scale. At midday, you pause in a park where sunlight filters through oak leaves in moving patches. The world around you is ordinary, picnic blankets, barking dogs, people scrolling their phones, but the air vibrates faintly, like a chord held beneath the noise. You close your eyes and feel it, the quiet network of grace connecting every heartbeat. Michael's voice drifts through the wind. This is the kingdom in motion, he says. Invisible, but never inactive. A child nearby drops a toy, and you instinctively reach down to hand it back. The child grins, and for a moment you catch a glimpse of something vast behind that simple smile, an echo of the same light that followed you through the storm. You realize then that the miracle was never about the thunder or the vision, it was about this exact moment of ordinary kindness carrying divine weight. God says, you were never rescued to be rare. You were rescued to be reachable. As the afternoon deepens, you sense Michael's presence thinning, like mist returning to sky. Where are you going, you ask. Nowhere far, he answers. I dwell in motion, remember? Every act of grace calls me by name. When you forgive, I arrive. When you build instead of blame, I stand beside you. When you choose patience over pride, my sword stays bright. He smiles, a human smile, weary and warm. The emergency is over. The assignment begins. You breathe in the golden air. The angel fades completely, leaving behind only a single feather of light that dissolves before it touches the ground. You feel no sadness, only continuity. That night you write, not to record what happened, but to remind yourself how it feels to live healed. Words spill easily. Today I listened, and the world spoke back in kindness. When you finish, the page glows faintly in the lamplight. It's enough. You close the notebook, whisper a prayer of thanks, and sleep without armor for the first time. God says, rest, builder of calm. Tomorrow the seeds you planted will bloom in strangers' gardens. And somewhere, unseen, Michael smiles again, watching the light move from heart to heart like dawn traveling through windows. The emergency that once threatened to break you has become the call that now remakes you. The harvest of peace. God says, when one heart heals, the field around it begins to bloom. What you release into the world returns multiplied as mercy. Dawn breaks softly, like a promise you no longer need to chase. The first sounds outside are simple: doors opening, coffee being poured, birds rehearsing their morning hymns, but together they form a single sentence: life continues. You rise before the alarm, no longer pulled by fear of what might go wrong, but drawn by curiosity about what might go right. The notebook you left on the table now holds a faint scent of jasmine. Between its pages lies the feather of light Michael left behind. It no longer glows, yet somehow it feels alive, pulsing faintly with warmth each time your hand nears it. A reminder, the divine doesn't vanish when unseen, it simply moves inward. Outside, the city exhales a mist of renewal. The storm scars, broken branches, scuffed walls, have been repurposed. Someone painted murals where the wind tore posters, children turned shattered roof tiles into mosaics. Everywhere you look, damage has become design. You walk the streets and see evidence of yesterday's quiet missions: the baker smiling again, the tired neighbor greeting passers-by, laughter returning to corners that once echoed complaint. The changes are small, but their sum feels seismic. Hope has learned to travel incognito. Archangel Michael appears briefly at the edge of vision, more suggestion than figure, light folded into sunlight. Look closely, he murmurs. Heaven's mathematics runs on multiplication through gratitude. Every thank you you offered became instruction for another soul. He points toward a square where volunteers plant new trees. The saplings bend in the breeze, roots wrapped around compost made from fallen leaves. Even decay feeds life when you stop resenting it, he adds. The ground remembers generosity. God says, the miracle you asked for was never distant, it waited for you to become soil deep enough to hold it. You join the volunteers, hands sinking into earth cool and rich. The act feels sacred, prayer without words, worship through motion. A woman beside you hums a tune that others slowly join, until the whole group moves to rhythm rather than instruction. Michael's laughter rolls through the breeze, soft thunder disguised as joy. As midday approaches, sunlight glints off the buildings like 1,000 small halos. People hurry past but their faces look different, less armored, more available. You realize that peace is not a state to achieve, it's a climate to cultivate. And climates, once formed, sustain even strangers. God says, I did not give you calm to keep, I gave it to loan to a restless world. Afternoon drifts into a gentle hush. You visit the hill where you once met the angel in the storm's aftermath. Grass covers the ground where lightning had scarred it. The mark remains faintly visible, not as wound but as witness. You kneel, press your palm to it, and feel the hum of continuity, the storm's energy recycled into fertility. A vision unfolds, across the planet, unseen hands planting kindness like seed, unseen hearts watering forgiveness, unseen prayers rising like mist until they fall again as compassion. The pattern is vast and familiar. You understand now that heaven doesn't send isolated miracles, it sends networks of restoration. You were never a recipient only, you were a relay. Michael's voice circles you like wind around a flame. This is the harvest, he says. Not fame, not proof, fruit. Every act of peace is a grain in the granary of eternity. The sun lowers, gilding the horizon. In that glow, you see people carrying baskets, figurative, luminous, filled with moments of goodness, reconciled friendships, softened tempers, laughter returned to long silent homes. They lift the baskets toward the sky, and light spills upward instead of downward. Heaven receives what earth has grown. God says, and I will keep sending rain where love is planted. You smile through tears that don't ache. The old anxiety has nowhere left to live, it has been evicted by gratitude. You stand, brushing soil from your knees, and whisper the only prayer that feels true, use me again. The wind answers with a whisper that sounds suspiciously like Michael's chuckle. Already happening, he says. Every breath you take writes peace into the atmosphere. Night returns, gentle and sure. You walk home under stars that shimmer like open eyes. The world feels watched over, not in fear but in fondness. You realize the harvest never really ends, it just changes caretakers. The same light that once found you in crisis now lives quietly inside you, ready to travel through every word, every touch, every moment of mercy you offer. God says, well done, bearer of calm. Sleep knowing that somewhere, another storm just turned into song because you chose to remain. The return of light. God says, every circle I draw ends where it began, but never as it began. When light returns, it finds you larger. Morning lifts quietly, not rushing, as though even the sun understands reverence. You wake before dawn's full arrival and sense that the air is different again, heavier with holiness, waiting to announce something. The feather of light that once rested between the pages of your notebook glows faintly, its pulse matches your own heartbeat. You know what this means. The messenger is near. You step outside. The city still sleeps, streets washed in the blue-gray of expectation. A low mist hovers above the ground, soft as breath. Then a warmth moves through it. A shimmer, a heartbeat of radiance, and from it steps Archangel Michael. No trumpet, no blaze, just calm power woven into gentleness. He looks at you with the kind of smile that folds whole storms into memory. It is done, he says. The peace you carried has taken root. The harvest continues without you having to tend every row. Heaven always multiplies stewardship. You bow your head, but Michael lifts your chin. Do not bow out of debt. Gratitude stands tall. Together you walk toward the edge of the city, where night gives way to amber. Each footstep leaves behind small sparks that fade into petals. These, Michael explains, are traces of obedience. Wherever you walked in faith, beauty remains as evidence. The path narrows to a hill crowned by silence. From its top, you can see every place that once held pain, rooftops where fear hid, streets where loss lingered. But now, all of them gleam faintly, as if glazed in forgiveness. The world hasn't become perfect, it has become transparent to grace. God says, "You asked me to remove darkness, instead I taught you to shine within it." Michael's armor brightens until you can see your reflection in it, not the tired version from the storm, but a person whole and unguarded. This, he says softly, is what heaven sees every time it looks at you. You ask, will there be more storms? There are always storms, he answers, but you will not meet them as a victim again. You are weatherproofed by trust. The angel raises his sword, not in threat but in salute. The blade catches the first direct beam of sunlight, scattering it into 1,000 ribbons that stretch across the horizon. Each ribbon touches someone else waking somewhere, a child calming after a nightmare, a nurse beginning her shift, an old man forgiving an old wound. Light travels faster through compassion. Michael turns to you. This is the return of light, not my light alone, but yours multiplied. You are part of the network now. Wherever mercy moves, we meet. The ground beneath your feet vibrates faintly, the air fills with tones too pure to be sound. You realize the whole planet is humming the same note, the music that underlies existence when it remembers its source. The feeling is neither pride nor awe, it's homecoming. God says, "You thought I lived above you. I live through you." Tears rise, clean and unashamed. The light brightens until you can see nothing but gold. For a heartbeat you fear you'll dissolve, but instead you expand. Your senses stretch beyond skin, you feel the pulse of rivers, the patience of mountains, the laughter of children you'll never meet. Every heartbeat in creation becomes your own echo. And at the center, steady as eternity, stands Michael, radiating calm. He lowers his sword, now transformed into a staff of light. You have walked the full circle, he says. Now walk freely. When you bless, I am there. When you forgive, I draw near. When you love, heaven breathes easier. You want to ask one more question, but the words dissolve into gratitude too vast for speech. The angel nods, understanding without hearing. Go, he says. Be luminous. The mist folds around him once more. When it clears, the hill is empty, yet the light remains, diffused through the sky like watercolor. You stand there until sunrise completes itself, bathing the world in quiet triumph. A new day begins. You descend the hill toward the living world, traffic starting, markets opening, someone humming the same tune the volunteers sang weeks ago. Life resumes, simple and sacred. You carry no visions now, no omens, only awareness. Every face you pass glows faintly, as though lit from within. Perhaps they always did, and you finally learned how to see. God says, the emergency became emergence. The tragedy became threshold. The light that saved you now travels under your name. You smile and whisper, Amen. And somewhere above the morning clouds, a familiar voice replies. Confirmed. The light moves on. The story continues. God says, the proof that your healing is real is that it heals someone you haven't met yet. In another part of the city, morning leans through lace curtains into a small kitchen where a woman named Eleanor sits with a cup of lukewarm tea. She is the kind of woman the world forgets to notice, silver hair pinned back, hands lined with faithful work, eyes that have learned to carry weather without complaint. On her table, a stack of unpaid bills, a church bulletin folded into a square, a photograph of a daughter who moved 3 states away and a husband whose quiet laugh no longer lives in this house. Grief taught Eleanor to move gently so the walls wouldn't hear her break. Even now, she stirs her tea carefully, as if noise might cost extra. Outside, the neighborhood has changed since the storm, mended fences, bright murals, young trees bandaged upright with soft cloth. But inside this kitchen, time still feels stalled. Eleanor tells herself the world is better, and she is glad, but she cannot find the ribbon that ties her back to it. She presses her palm against the cool table and whispers the prayer she always prays, Lord, I don't want a sign, I just don't want to be in the way. Archangel Michael stands unseen beside the stove where a single blue flame keeps vigil. He knows every temperature of her sorrow, every note in the hymn she hums when the kettle sings. His armor is dim to house light, his presence woven into ordinary. Today, he says softly, the circle widens. Across town, you leave home with no plan beyond obedience. Peace doesn't schedule, it listens. You carry a paper bag with 2 warm rolls from the baker, who insisted you take them because someone paid ahead. Heaven enjoys these quiet conspiracies. You walk the route you never used to take, the one that adds 10 extra minutes and 1 extra chance to be useful. God says, I move hearts like currents move leaves, subtly, surely, until 2 lives touch without knowing why. A bus hisses to a stop a block away from Eleanor Street. You step down and feel it, that gentle tug, the compass a healed heart learns to trust. Your feet choose for you, left at the elm, straight past the iron gate, pause at the corner house with the blue door and the window that holds a thinning fern. There. Inside, Eleanor stands to search for the missing stamp she swears she left by the salt. Instead she finds her late husband's pocketknife, the one she tucked into a drawer the day after the funeral and promised never to open again. She holds it, surprised by the warmth in the metal, and laughs once, a small sound like a door testing its hinge. When the knock comes, she jumps, then smooths her apron as if smoothing time itself. You don't have a speech, only a sense. When the door opens, both of you blink as if stepping into each other's weather. Good morning, you say, and it lands like a small benediction. You hold up the paper bag. The baker made too many. It is not a lie, it is a miracle wearing manners. Eleanor hesitates, then nods, then opens the door wider in that order, as if hospitality must remember its steps after a long sleep. Michael watches the exchange with the practiced tenderness of one who has guarded 1,000,000 meetings like this. He knows the holiness of bread placed on a table and the theology of chairs pulled close. He stands between you like a beam of sunlight no one sees, warming the room into readiness. You talk of nothing for 5 minutes that matter for 50 years. Weather. The elm that still leans but refuses to fall. How some birds returned and some didn't. Eleanor pours fresh tea and forgets to apologize for the chipped cup. You tear the bread and the crust breaks with that satisfying crack that makes kitchens feel true. Somewhere in the conversation, a sentence arrives you did not plan. When the storm came, I was sure I'd shatter. Turns out I only opened. Eleanor looks down so you won't see her eyes fill. She nods once, twice. I remember opening, she says. It felt like breaking until it didn't. She touches the old pocketknife and smiles at it the way you smile at an old map you finally learned to read. God says, the medicine you keep becomes memory. The medicine you share becomes movement. Michael's hand hovers over the table, not touching, yet everything steadies beneath it, the cup, the breath, the moment. He turns to the window where light has shifted from pale to honey and speaks into the quiet, the second flame. Eleanor does not hear the words, but her stove's small blue tongue brightens. Your chest loosens the way a knot loosens in warm water. Something nearly invisible but entirely real passes between you, permission. By afternoon, the paper bag is empty and the kitchen feels like a porch facing summer. You've exchanged phone numbers without making promises too heavy to carry. You've offered to water the fern next week if needed. Eleanor has written your name on a notepad she keeps by the phone, the same notepad where she wrote her husband's last grocery list and never tore the page away. She adds a new page now. The sound of the paper tearing is the sound of a story turning. Outside the blue door, you linger a step because goodbyes deserve clarity. Thank you for eating with me, you say. Eleanor laughs, surprised. I've never heard it that way, she answers. I always say thank you for visiting. Then we've divided the gratitude evenly, you reply. The humor lands exactly where it should, between the old sadness and the new courage, and the ground remembers how to hold both without cracking. God says, what you call small will be the hinge the next decade swings on. The days that follow braid themselves with these threads. You stop by once a week, never empty-handed, never overlong. Eleanor starts taking the longer route to the market because the elm looks better from that side and because the neighbor with the terracotta pot smiles with her eyes. She hums before she knows she's humming. She writes a letter to her daughter, not to fill guilt but to offer weather. The storm came. The house held. I am learning new light. She does not mention angels. She does not need to. Michael stands watch where streets intersect and prayers cross without names. He listens to the city's pulse and hears two heartbeats learning the same tempo. The network grows, he says, and the syllables sound like wind-adjusting chimes. He sees how your piece did not perform, it practiced. He sees how Eleanor's grief did not vanish, it volunteered to be useful. These are the miracles that keep the world turning when headlines forget to. Weeks later, the baker tapes a note to her door, free rolls on Thursdays. Somebody started it, let's keep it going. The someone is no one, which is to say, heaven. A kid from the high school starts carrying groceries on his bike for anyone who asks. The fern in Eleanor's window thickens into green confidence. The pocketknife finds a new purpose, trimming twine for the tomato vines she decided to stake again. Everything ordinary rehearses resurrection until it remembers the steps without being told. God says, I am not only God of storms and swords. I am God of kettles, keys, and kind hands that show up. One evening, as gold leaves learn their last language and the air carries wood smoke like a psalm, Eleanor stands at her window and watches the street lamp halo the blue door. She whispers toward the ceiling, toward the picture frame, toward the mystery that holds all three, I am not in the way. Below the whisper, a deeper sentence forms that sounds like God borrowing her voice, I am on the way. Across town, you pause mid-step because joy tapped your shoulder. You don't trace it, you trust it. Peace doesn't need receipts. You simply say, thank you, out loud to the street, and the street somehow says it back with the soft applause of leaves. Archangel Michael rises into the night, not to leave, but to widen view. From above, he watches the small network glow, your door, the baker's door, the blue door where Eleanor sleeps with the radio low. He marks each point with quiet fire and draws lines between them until the city looks like a constellated blessing. Second flame, he repeats, and third, and fourth. Then, to no one and to everyone, he offers the verdict heaven loves best when plans become people, confirmed. God says, the light I lit in you has found another wick. This is how we keep the world from going dark, And somewhere between kettle and comet, pocketknife and psalm, two lives, one once terrified, one long tired, learn the same secret at the same time. Miracles rarely arrive as announcements. They arrive as neighbors.